Hello, Kim.
Hello, Catherine. Is that your full name, actually?
Catherine.
Is it?
Catherine Magella.
There you go. Catherine Magella Ellis. How are you
Catherine
today?
Magella Ellis.
Tell us a bit
I'm
about
okay.
yourself.
Oh, well, I've checked my DNA and I'm Irish.
Oh,
to be sure.
Are we related? Oh, no,
I'm
only messing.
Mate, do you know what? My DNA was 100% Irish. I bet you're not even 100% Irish. Yeah.
Well, at least I was born there.
Yeah.
Got me little passport. I can go anywhere I want to go.
Born in Manchester. Oh, you've got a European passport, don't you?
Yeah. Have to get jet setting. Anyway, people, this is not a personal chat. This is the show. Welcome to the viewers of this episode. Welcome to the participants that are eagerly awaiting the comments of the guests in this episode. The show is a learning design competition. It's basically where people take on a brief. They put the submissions in. The industry gets to vote on if they met the brief criteria. I'm pretty excited about this brief. There's been lots of chatter about what people were supposed to do, what they were supposed to submit, all this kind of stuff, which we're going to get into. If you watch the 2 episodes, there's a lot of learning. But before I get into that, I want to introduce basically just a cool session that is happening at the Learning Conference, because the Learning Conference, like the show is part of the Learning Conference. The Learning Conference is basically an online virtual event, 3 days, 3 time zones that you're like starting at 9 a.m. in their time zone. Epic people there. One of the epic people is a guy called Morton. His session is on immersive, interactive, educational films. Let me just give you a lowdown. I'm going to check my notes though. It's about film and interactivity to make powerful learning experiences. Now, I remember when I wasn't even an instructional designer, I didn't even know what that term meant, but I saw one of his examples, Lifesaver. And I was like doing e-learning development at the time. It's not probably even that long ago, but it's just so freaking cool. You should find it on Google. And it was basically in a subway. Someone was needing assistance, and it was an interactive video where you had to perform CPR on someone that required assistance, and you were using your computer. It's e-learning, but an interactive video. I was like, wow, that's the kind of projects I want to work on. He also has another one called Real Talk About Suicide. Definitely go check them out, like amazing. But Martin's going to join us as a keynote on one of the days. He's going to share his methodology. He's going to say why he never works with scripts, like having them fully scripted out, why he doesn't even check the resume of actors, and basically how you can use research to figure out these interactive experiences. Kathy, you excited about that keynote?
Very much. I can remember when Lifesaver came out, we were all doing it at the office. We were all looking at it, just going, oh my God. But I think what was amazing was watching the reactions on staff members' face when they actually had to do CPR on the person. So I'm pretty sure it was clicking their mouse, and they were like, oh my God, I'm so tired. You know, can you imagine actually doing CPR with this?
Yeah.
And it really did immerse people, and just the emotional reaction that people had to it. So I think Martin is going to do a really fantastic session, and he's going to, you know, obviously be open to great questions and answers from people. So yeah.
I guess, yeah, if you have never thought that you can change behavior through e-learning, like this will demonstrate that you can, because it is that emotional. You feel stress the way that they've created it, trying to save someone's life. So that's pretty epic.
And he's going to focus a lot on research. So actually, what were the results that came from it, and the research that's been done. So that's going to be great as far as giving us the tools to go and try these different approaches, and, you know, see that there is some validation behind them. So yeah,
very
really
cool.
good.
Let's get into the show.
Let's get into the show and meet our guest.
Our special guest today is Greg Williams. He's a senior learning designer, and he also hosts a podcast called the Learning Experience Leader Podcast. I know that Greg started this podcast as his own learning experience. So he actually wanted to be curious and put himself out there to start a podcast so he could be a better practitioner. So I freaking love that. How has that worked out for you? What are you learning? Has it been a good self-development experience?
Oh yeah, it's been the best, especially since I got to start. I got to start with Kim coming on right early at the beginning, and it's been a really great roller coaster ever since. So I feel like there's no better way to learn something to set up time with somebody else and just talk to them and hear their stories. So it's been really great. I've loved it.
That's really cool. Well, welcome to the show. Have you been watching, and anything you like about it, or you're excited about being here today?
I'm really excited to be here and very grateful for the opportunity. What I love about this is the overall mission of raising the level of skills of everybody. There's the element of the competition, but I think the place of where it's coming from and the whole conference is just a phenomenal, very generous project. So I'm really happy to participate.
Thanks. Well, before we get in, I think there's a bit of controversy between you two, because this t-shirt, that's a Star Trek t-shirt. Pat's a Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
Well, one word of why, Kath, one word only. Why is Star Wars better than Star Trek?
I don't know. I just no. Do you know what?
Not a true fan. Not a true fan.
There's not one word. There's not one word. Maybe it's a sound.
There's a sound effect. There's a sound effect. Greg, one word. Why Star Trek is better than Star Wars? You've said it now. Okay. So we got one thing's going, and the other one's like, Okay, so they both sound shy. Don't watch them at home, people. No,
you assume
there's so much more from both. And it's not like
it's
not like I don't like Star Trek. I think I just grew up with Star Wars. I just love Star Wars.
I just want a drama on the show, guys. Come on, it doesn't matter. Really, I don't care what you like. All right, come on. I'm going to take you through the brief, Greg, and viewers at home. Let's see what they had to do. Well, we had Clarissa. Clarissa was the client. She is an L&D manager at a global engineering firm. She has a lot of learning designers around the globe, and they're all using different storyboard templates. And basically, she wants to streamline that process and have one consistent approach. They have licenses for Articulate 360 and beyond. And she was looking for a mock-up of what you'd include in the perfect storyboard template. So what she needed was a one-page project overview so SMEs and other stakeholders can get up to speed quickly on the project, and a one-page storyboard layout. Basically, she also said we need you to turn it around in 1 day. Now, the criteria for this, let me take you through it. Gregory, is that your name?
That is my name, yes.
Is that what you get told when you're naughty? Like, you didn't do the dishes, Gregory?
Yeah, it's pretty much my mom and an elementary school teacher that I have that still call me that. So
okay, well, I'll call you G-Dog then, because you're cool.
All right.
You got the swagger today. So G-Dog and viewers at home, this is the criteria. Basically, can it be achieved within the time, which is 1 day? We need a one-page project overview. We need a one-page storyboard layout. You have to have instructions throughout it. You need to have, it needs to work for Articulate 360 because that's what their license are in. So there you've got Articulate, but you've also got Rise. Dun, 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 dun. That was a little trick, wasn't it? And then Beyond as well. And it needs to be editable. Now, I want to tell you that as you want to look back on this or vote, you can go and have a look at the Miller Note and you can go into them in more detail. But I want to give general feedback to the participants and the viewers of this, because I know that this is a learning experience and we have lots of kind of general feedback to consider that we would like to have seen throughout. So some of that is, we encourage you to proofread your work. Make sure that you don't have grammar or spelling mistakes. There might be a mix of fonts. It might not open on Mac versus PC. Make sure that you get peer feedback. You need to make sure that your work makes sense to someone else. If you will have this, you are going to have this grand vision in your head, and you're not always the best at articulating that out, not through your own intention, but we get so consumed by our projects and our tasks that we need to take a step away. So I'm encouraging you to go and seek peer feedback. If you're doing the show, I would encourage you to put it out on LinkedIn and all social media and say, does this make sense? Does this meet the brief? Because that's essentially what is happening in the real world. If you don't understand the brief, you should go back to the client and clarify. We've had lots of that in the previous episode. Can't remember if it's coming on this, but potentially. Then we encourage you to read the brief and interpret it yourselves and make your own checklist, because there's been lots of entries that have missed things that were meant to meet the criteria. So things like it should have been for beyond, rise, and articulate, but some people are just giving us storyboards that will only work for articulate. So having your own checklist to make sure that you're presenting back to the client what they're expecting to see. And then the last thing is to really consider this idea of non-conforming. In the last episode, we had a discussion about it, so I'm not going to reiterate that discussion here, but basically non-conforming is where opportunities from government or tenders, where they will say, you haven't met the rules we said that you needed to submit your submission in, so therefore we're not going to accept it. We won't even read it, even if it's the best example ever. We're just going to throw it in the bin because you couldn't follow the instructions at this starting point of the project. So that is things, for example, here we said 2 pages. We said present it as a PDF. So if we wanted to, or meet the deadline, it needed to be in by this time, it would be very easy for us to say, knocked out, you're not conforming. But we haven't been that rude or that nasty this time, but it might happen in future rounds, so make sure you're not non-conforming. Let's get into the first submission.
This is God. This is the devil. Please stop talking.
But you could use that voice to say, don't be non-conforming and follow the brief.
Don't be non-conforming.
And back to friendly cat. That's what she's like off screen to me. Jesus, guys.
Oh, I tell you. Am I back to normal?
I don't know if you're ever normal, to be honest, but go on.
I thought you'd find that funny. You
not.
just talk all the time.
It's about educating people. I'm trying.
You've talked for 13 minutes. Let's get into it.
Serious. You just had a little voice there. People can skip it. We have chapters.
Is this my normal voice?
I don't know. Yeah, go on. You're grand.
I'm grand. Okay, let's go. I can't hear myself, people. Did you hear that voice? This is why I can't speak anymore. All right, shall we move on to the first participant?
I had 13 minutes of talking, but you had 13 minutes of self-confusion. Go on, give us the first participant.
Okie dokie, let's do it. Michael Morton from Geelong. Okay.
In Australia, for you people.
In Australia.
It may have some landmark that you want to go see, but not quite sure, to be honest.
Jesus.
We have these things in Australia where it's like the giant pineapple and random. So there's probably something in Geelong that's like
they're all lobster. In Queensland. They're not down in Victoria.
Where the cool places. All right, Michael. No. What he has here is his storyboard. He's presenting upfront his understanding of the problem and saying to the client, this is what I believe that you are looking for. He's given options for Storyline 360 and Rise in his storyboard template. Now, flick to the next screen. He's got things like his course name, slide numbers, navigation buttons, heading and font formatting. He's presented a couple of different layouts as options, like drag and drop, video layouts. It's a text-only screen. Now, Kat, what are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts? Michael, this is a template. It's a course template. It's not a storyboard template. So, looks great, looks lovely. I think there's just been a misunderstanding of the brief here, because what we were wanting was the stage before this. And for everyone who's watching, please jump onto Google and type in Storyboard Template. So we're looking for a document that would basically, we'd be writing all of the content, we'd be writing every word, and it would be given to the stakeholder to be approved before the build. So as wonderful as this looks, this was not what was requested in the brief. Kim?
Yeah. We had this in the last episode. Yeah, a misinterpretation of storyboard template versus templates for Rise and Articulate and also Beyond. Greg, what kind of things would you normally put in your storyboard?
Well, yeah, I think it's an interesting, I can see how folks may get confused, especially reading it fast, because I will only create storyboards, and it's just the nature of the projects and work that I've had in my small career. I'll only create storyboards for really high production projects, whether that's going to include like a lot of video, or it's going to include a lot of assets, or I've got a lot of different stakeholders I'm working for and the stakes are super high. Otherwise, I'll use Rise or I'll use Storyline to prototype, right? Because I can create something pretty fast and get it out for people to look at and review using that awesome review feature that Articulate has. And so that's kind of how I differentiate. And if I am storyboarding, it's usually just for super high stakes projects that that I want to make sure every benchmark is signed off on before I keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The feedback, that sign off is like, that's a critical thing about storyboards, and being able to go back and be like, hey, remember back here where you signed it off? Like now it's a variation to scope.
Yeah,
exactly.
So, I mean, I do prototyping in Adobe XD, and I can actually render that out and give them something to actually test, you know, and then export those assets out and put them into Storyline or whatever tool that I've built in.
Yeah.
But it's a shame because it looks great. And you're not the only one who's done this, Michael. You know, we've had a couple of and we've said as well, Kim, we will reflect a little bit on this. You know, we did try and explain what we were requiring, and some people have got it and some people have gone this route. So yeah. Any more to say?
Participants.
Okay. Okay, so our next participant is Troy. Let's see what Troy has submitted.
Sweet. So Troy has put together an editable PDF. He's got some over on the left, some ideas of kind of guidance. So focusing on, you know, accessibility, you need to meet AA standards. That's really important for everyone across the project to be aware of. Compliance, how to simplify and how to use this actual template. What he's done is his, I guess, notables from other storyboards that you're going to see, or if you've watched the last episode, is he's put a little place in there of where to go for support if you need help with using the storyboard. I thought that was quite cool. The programming, so talking about that specifically, and also variables. So he's calling it out that if these are happening, these are the specific variables. And maybe I'm going to assume explanations around them. So if another developer went in and looked at the triggers, for example, in a storyline file, they were able to, like, sometimes it's very hard to interpret the logic of another developer's approach, but he's going to explain it in his storyboards. That's quite interesting. But in terms of an overview, he's got the course name, duration, his version of storyboard, target audience, the purpose or background, success measures, learning objectives, who's developing it, the authoring tool, voiceover artist, and the key business stakeholder, components of the project, possible project constraints, out of scope work, assessment description. All of these have a little explanation beside them. And then the review deadline, review round, approval deadline, storyboard, reviewers. And then in his actual storyboard, the next page, he's showing a mock-up of what it can look like, and it's kind of pre-filled. And yeah, so that's kind of him demonstrating, you know, this is the screen layout that you would use. And yeah, what do you think, Greg?
I love on that first page, the project plan. I think all of us talk about project plans, and I know, at least in my experience, if you ask anybody, yeah, that project plan, that's great. What I love about this is it's just calling out very specific things. And if you're required to use this template, right, if the client's going to pass this out to everybody, you have to fill in the box with something, right? And so being able to, well, what is success? All right, let's define that. Who is going to do our voiceover? A lot of these things that can fall through the cracks until you're almost past your due date, it's requiring people to think through. So I love the level of detail here. And for some, it might seem like overkill. Others, it might be, oh, you should see my 7-page project plan. But I think it strikes a nice balance of detail. It focused on the most important critical things that you would want in a plan. So I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, again, really the same thing as what you're saying, Greg. Like his level of detail. Did he say somewhere specific that this was an interactive PDF?
Yes, and his example, you can actually go and play with it like it's live, editable.
So I like that. I like that things won't move. However, it'd be really interesting to see how a client would give edits on that as an interactive PDF. Just to put it out there. But there's so many benefits with regards to boxes not moving. That's what gets really messy about storyboards. Things starting to... no matter how you do them, they kind of can get messy and go over one page and all that kind of stuff. This can also be quite tricky if someone wanted to print it out and those components of the project went under there because they actually don't print. My goodness, sorry, I've gone and clicked on the thing. So they don't print past the page. So that's just another thing to consider.
Yeah, if there was extra text, because you can't really move the boxes on this screen is what you're saying, hey?
Yeah. So it's great to view, but not to do a hard print. So these, and I'm being totally picky now because I think the solution is very good. And I love his level of detail and what he's been thinking about.
Agreed.
One thing that I'll say about programming and variables is I think if I worked for a big organization and I was doing the ID and then it was handed over to a DD, a digital designer, they might get a bit funny, or that might be too much for me as far as dictating to them what variables to use and things like that. However, it can be something that's literally, it could be a storyboard that's in phases, Kim, that goes to the learning designer first, and then the digital designer fills in that kind of component, and it's kind of a conversational, that it's something that they work as a team. Yeah, I'm wanting to bring this name through, so I'm going to bring, he's got an example there, name variable. So I think the only thing is sometimes for a client, some things are too much information for them to know at this stage. It doesn't need, and a lot of this stuff is worked out at the next stage, but there's no harm in having it there. So yeah, I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, my thing is like all in one place. Multiple documents become very crazy. So I actually like that level. And then I think it's and you might not use it and then you can delete it, right? or leave it blank. And the other thing is potentially it's the same person that's the instructional designer in development, or they developer, sorry, and they're working as a team. And I think one thing I'd just say as well with, he has mentioned how he's going to handle the Vyond stuff, but I think a simple way to handle Vyond is like just asterisks the things that are, if this is only going to be used for animations in Vyond, just use the things that have the little asterisks beside it, so that you can have one storyboard that fits all tools. And that would be relevant to Rise to a certain extent as well.
Yeah, I have one template for everything, and it works
Same.
fine.
Actually, I was gonna. You use Word, and it's funny because we started using Word, and freaking hell, you'd open it on between a Google Sheet or just regular Word, and the formatting would be all over the place. Because I know you were talking about in the last episode about one screen per page, and then as commentary goes on, if you have 2 or 3 rounds of review, it can get a bit hectic. So we moved to PowerPoint because PowerPoint seems to open consistently across all different versions and devices. And what we do then is, what we found with Word is people type and type and type forever. If this is, I guess, from a perspective of you're giving the storyboard is coming to you from a client to just do the development. When they have a Word document, they write it like it's a book. If they have a PowerPoint, they are thinking in screen and they're a bit more restricted, and therefore there's less text on. And our storyboard restricts people to only have like a certain amount of words. I don't know what it is, but just say it's 300 words max per screen, because then it starts to shift off the slide and they can see that shit cray.
So here's the key thing that I do religiously that is not on these templates. Is I put the duration of the slide. So people read it 160 words a minute. Mm-hmm. So that is their restriction. So if I've got a slide that is 160 words, that is approximately 1 minute. Okay. Yep. So I stipulate how much content goes in each thing. So if a client wants, okay, well, this needs to go in. Okay, what's going out? What's being taken out? So again, you can restrict content.
Yeah, agreed.
You know.
One element that caught my attention, last thing on this one, was the client feedback area. And I find that feedback is such a ficky thing. It can be, depending on the stakeholders you're working with, right? And what the client wants and how that feedback process works. I don't know, it's kind of cool to see on a storyboard template before, because I've never seen it on there before. Maybe that's super common, I don't know. But I find it really helpful to concentrate client feedback. So even if you had a template of types of questions for like, this is the type of feedback we'd like to look for, or even if it's like a suggested for phase 1, we're looking for, are we on the right page? Phase 2, are there any functional errors or whatever it might be, to try to harness the lens of where what the feedback's focused on. Yeah. I find that to be hard to focus in on just a small area, but it may be that this could be utilized for a very specific thing, whether it's the feedback from the stakeholder themselves as a client, or as the SME who represents the client. I mean, feedback is such a massive thing. But it's interesting to see that here on a storyboard template.
One last thing I'd like to just say before we move on is, if this is in a PowerPoint template, how are they controlling how many slides are on that template? And how are they controlling the order of the template?
Yeah, well, I guess in ours, I just think about that. The order, we actually have a thing, what's the previous slide and what's the next one, especially if it's something that is a branching scenario.
I know, but this is an interactive PDF. Do you understand?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I don't know how that would work in this.
Yeah. It's just some things to think about.
Oh yeah, it's the usability. I guess that's the gap. Maybe potentially this hasn't been tested. And that's the opportunity is, you know, there's really great detail here. Now, how functional is it? And that's your prototyping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, okay,
With
if
all
this
of them
was,
as well.
yeah, you know, and if this was built in PowerPoint, for example, using exactly the same thing and then rendered out as a PDF, or is it an interactive? Because if it's an interactive PDF, it kind of has to be predetermined to make it interactive.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, it's a bit more restricting as a PDF, but it's more flexible, but the same kind of look and feel, similar functionality using text boxes if you're doing it in PowerPoint.
Yeah. Anyway, I think the level of detail is great, Troy. It's certainly the kind of detail that we're looking for. So awesome work. Any other feedback on this? Or are we moving on?
Let's go.
All right. Okay, so this was it looking at so this was looking at it blank. Yeah.
In there, he's got the questions, like as a learning designer, ask yourself these questions to fill it out. So our next participant is...
It is our friend Tom, who's a learning geek.
Tom.
Let's have a look at Tom's submission.
All right, Tom is proposing OneNote. We had this in the last episode. Tom did give us mock-ups though in PDF form. If you can see over on the image, the bottom part, he's actually demonstrated Trello in use. So kind of bringing that to the attention of the project management side of the storyboard. What else have I got? I need to have a look at anything. He's got his overview. Things like a project description, and then he's giving like instructions underneath that this is like a high level description of the situation. There's more that goes with it. The objectives, he said, put clear bullet points in here, stakeholders and sign off, and he has got a project role, their name, their contact details, and their responsibilities. I think that's quite a valuable addition. He's included things like accessibility requirements. It's a little checklist that you can tick off of what level it is. What else have we got? Target audience, resources. He's actually included things in there such as, you know, the budget, things that might be costing. So I think that might be, you know, if they were, I don't know, doing part video or something, or they needed to put, they decided partway through, they're like, oh, we need a Shutterstock license. So including that potentially, the different technology that will be used, and then the human talent to make it all come together. And then he's emphasized the project, project schedule, as I said, using Trello. And then on his next page, he's given a little mock-up to say this is kind of the output that we're expecting from you to represent kind of clear consistency, the end result. And then on the right-hand side, what he's saying is things like the on-screen text, the voiceover, the video, audio content, graphical content, and the accessibility as per the slide that you are looking at. And things like slide animation and interaction are included. And then what he did quite well as well that I liked is he has these review comments. So he's got, you know, in terms of the design, the reviewer is to record proposed changes to the slide design as to-dos, and then it's a little checkbox. So just that accountability. And the review comments are around the parameters of design, interaction, and content. So I think parameters, I said in the last episode, are really important when you're going out for feedback. Greg, what you thinking?
I think either I'm really ignorant or something else. It's probably the first. So OneNote can be used across, I mean, I guess assuming as long as someone has the Microsoft suite, whether they're on Mac or not, it can be used collaboratively, like in the cloud. I've never used it that way before, but
so I did a bit of a search for it last night, and you can invite your clients in to OneNote. So OneNote is actually free now as part of the Microsoft suite.
Okay.
Now, I did quite a bit of research because I was then like, oh, well, what if they're on a Chromebook, you know? And it's even available on Chrome
Oh,
through a
that is
Chrome
really
app.
cool. That's
Yeah.
a big learning for me on this, because that's a tool I used a lot in my last job to as a personal knowledge management. You know,
Yeah.
I liked organizing my stuff that way for different meetings and notes and stakeholder and whatever's. I'd never considered it as a deliverable format though. So this is really cool to see that used. And if it is truly deliverable this way, it solves some of the problems I think we were talking about on the earlier piece, just about you have a lot more flexibility to write in things and to add things without as strong of constraints that you would have with like the interactive PDF. Though I'm trying to remember the criteria that you named at the beginning of the show. If it has to be a PDF, I don't know if this
They
falls under
just
that.
needed to submit their submission,
Yeah.
but the tool, they actually had flexibility in the tool.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, then that makes sense. So I think it's nice to have that flexibility, and OneNote definitely has a you can write forever, which could be a blessing and a curse. But
Yeah.
back to what I was saying earlier about the feedback element, and you commented on it, Kim, is the ability to put in more. And I think there are few feelings more glorious than, than checking a box in OneNote.
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful feeling. So I think that's cool to be able to have that accountability and marking it off. So this is a neat way of using a tool that I have liked in the past for personal reasons, but this is great to use with stakeholders too.
Nice. Kath?
I feel the same way. I used it years ago at university to kind of curate my lecture notes, and I've played around with tools like Notion to see if you can storyboard in Notion, in which you can. This though I think was it was presented very well. I mean, taking a comment that I made in the previous episode, we given them the fonts, pop-ins. He's used the branding very nicely. He's even shown how it's looking, how it would look in Microsoft OneNote, in which that was kind of missing, remember, with our other submission for OneNote, Kim. So I like this a lot. I can see it working very well, the way he's laid out this content. Have I used OneNote recently though? No, I haven't, but it certainly looks like it would work very well. I'm interested seeing the slides on the right hand side. I think that would be really easy to reorder content, which is great. Do you agree? And so I think that it's smart, and you could probably duplicate, just right click and duplicate, and very smart in that kind of sense. You could even across the top maybe use chapters, you know, or whether it's section 1, section 2, or intro or whatever. So the sky's the limit, really, the way that you use this, and moving things around would be good. We talked a little bit about if it was a branching scenario, how would that work? So that would be something that he'd need to think whether that's, but because it's Microsoft, that would probably work with links. I don't know. You know, you'd link one thing to the next. So I like it. I like this scenario. I think I could see it working very well. Yeah. So, and it seems like you can embed a lot of things in there. I mean, it's dangerous kind of telling someone to use a specific tool, but with it being a tool that's available on all devices and it being free, I think it's a consideration, a good consideration.
Yep. Cool. Who's next?
Next, we have Stephanie. And let's see what Stephanie has submitted for us.
Okay, so Stephanie's given us a Word document.
Google Docs.
Oh, was it Google Docs? Okay.
Yeah.
She has got some stuff. Let me get me notes. basically her instructions are quite clear in that she's, really thinking about maybe this person's never used it before. So she's saying, this is a master template. This is what it opens with straight up. Please go to File, make a copy, and save in your client folder before filling it in. And then it even has like the little screen grab of how to do that. So the instructions, once you've done this, then you can go on and do whatever else. She is encouraging people to apply instructional design as part of their storyboarding process. So she's got her own little, that's what the icons are: gather, organize, draft, review, finalize as an overview step. So I think that's feedback we had in the last round, was apply instructional design to how you present your ideas across to other people. So in this, she's like, before you start your storyboard, please ensure you have gathered all relevant information, you know what's necessary to include and what's nice to have, and that you've organized your content in a way that reflects the bigger picture. So I guess she's speaking to learning designers of all levels using her template. And then the next screen over, where you can see the post-it notes, is she's kind of showing like how it could be mapped out, saying, intro, learning objectives, this topic, subtopic. And then she's talking about the why, the what, the how, and what happens next to include. She goes into more detail. So it went beyond 2 pages, where she has things like the scene title, what content she's linking to, how, like the seat time, how long will this interaction take, which is what you were saying you have in yours, Kath, the goal, the approach and method. Then she's got the presentation. So what is the scenario that you're setting up? For example, it might be a character asking a question or sharing a challenge. What are the key messages or narration? What's visually happening on screen is that box on the top right. What's the programming or interactivity notes underneath, and to be resolved. So it's kind of like if you need to follow up with your SME on something and you're unsure, that's where this kind of communication happens. And then at the end, she said the purpose of storyboards is to confirm blah, 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 like what they're all about. And then she's saying, it's a really good idea. So she's kind of trying to extend the capabilities, I guess, of the instructional designers using her template, that you should prototype, and a prototype should be X, Y, and Z. Kath, I'll throw to you first.
Yep. So I know we were asking for quite a lot from the participants to put on one screen. I can understand that. This isn't the kind of storyboard template that I've seen before, as far as it probably would have been better to try and keep that all on one page so she could visually see. Because
even those entries,
the font's quite big. For example, I'd make the font significantly smaller. Because there's not. I mean, where do you put the content? Where do you put the learning content here?
I think you replace that red text. So they're the instructions for that particular row or column, and that's replaced when you actually storyboard. So this is more like a kit, I guess.
Yeah. So this isn't a storyboard that she's presented.
Well, I think the table is.
No, it's not. So the scene title. So let's say it's intro. Content linkage, I can understand that. Where's it coming from? I'm really confused. Goal. What is the goal?
2 pages,
Approach method. So, but you wouldn't do that for each slide.
Yeah, well, you might though. Like, I think it's just different language, right? Approach method. The way I interpret her thing is click and reveal, drag and drop. So it's almost like developer notes, or what's the functionality or interactivity, I mean.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, the body text, and I don't see where that is.
That's that big, where is it? key messages and narration is like the text, and then she's got that visual is demonstrating what would be happening on screen.
Yeah.
I guess showing images or a wireframe or something.
So, I mean, look, my feeling is if I have a confusion here, then it's likely that the SME or the Clarissa from LexCorp is going to have some confusion as well. Does that make sense? I haven't seen termination like this on. I haven't seen a storyboard using this kind of terminology before. So, I mean, I've seen learning objectives aligned to certain slides. I don't know if it just needs this much space to talk about how the content will be presented and some of this stuff. Yeah.
What do you reckon, Greg? Oh, that's feedback. Yeah, that's your yeah. Thank you. And Greg?
Yeah, I think the kind of the before and after on either end with the table sandwiched in the middle, the stuff before and after seem like helpful content, but I feel like that is really good to have those types of conversations with your teams or with the stakeholder to kind of be on the same page. I'm not sure a template's the right home for that kind of thing. And I say that because I'm the kind of person that I write out this kind of stuff all the time. I write it all out, and I hope that everyone agrees and we're all on the same page and we're gonna be aligned and just work like really effectively and efficiently. What I found though is people rarely read all the stuff that I write. Even though I think it's so good and it's true and we should follow it. So trying to find ways to focus it on the storyboard itself, I think Kath is hinting at that a little bit, is like, how can we make the affordance of this thing more obvious? So when I see the storyboard, I naturally start figuring out what I need to plug into it rather than, how do I use this kind of thing? And but the intentionality of all that text is really good. It's just a matter of how can we funnel that intentionality in a way that makes itself usable upon discovery rather than needing to kind of figure out and learn from all the text on how to use it. So
yeah, I think what you're getting at, and I think this is a really good takeaway for people, is you know, a template should be self-explanatory. You shouldn't have to explain how to use it. I know we said instructions, but it's more about, it's going beyond that, where you're having to justify or explain something out. That's not instructions, you know, that's kind of explaining how you should use it, but it should be self-sufficient and not need interpretation. That's user experience design.
Yeah, I feel like just using the word narration, you know, body content, click and reveal, or you know, if this all could have been on one slide and potentially configured a little bit different, and it would have been maybe a bit clearer. Maybe it's just all the text that I was a little bit overwhelmed with. But
yeah, and I think that comes to usability. Like, some people like the detail. I definitely don't like detail myself. Some people will take, like, it would overwhelm me if I opened something and it was like pages upon pages. So it's considering those kinds of things as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go on to the next one.
All right, boss. So our next submission came from Rekha. Let's have a look what she submitted.
All right, Rekha is suggesting Millernote as her storyboard. She's basically starting out with her project overview page. And this has instructions in it. So such as, like, for example, like, this is going to be a drag and drop, or, you know, this is completed now. This is a click and reveal. So she's got the instructions written there. What you're seeing in those little kind of the cards are, this is her project overview, and the content that she's looking at here presenting is things to be done. So we still need to do the course review, publish the course, what's in progress, Modules 1 to 2 are developed out of 6. What's in review? A training needs analysis, and there's feedback using emojis. I think people quite connect to that kind of stuff. What's complete? The kickoff meeting and storyboard, and roadblock. So it's more project management. And then if we go on to the next one, we can see her actual kind of template that she's saying is editable. She's got upfront the types of screens. So you can pick, it's an animation screen, it's a static graphic, it's a click and reveal, it's a drag and drop. This is a video, it should be a simulation. So she's really calling out what's happening on screen. And then she's saying then how many slides, where is this one in the sequence? What is the description, the duration, number of minutes or seconds per screen? What's the audio? So that narration script. And these are all, I'm calling out what's in her actual descriptors, her instructions, I mean. What's the on-screen text, the graphic description? So she's saying, you know, is it things like an illustration, or is it a photos, for example? And we've got the style guide. So all the colors are there ready for people to use. I guess that's a good thing for global stuff. You know, font size, all that kind of thing, background style, image guidelines. She's got then the third one's the course title. So she's looking at, you know, this is what it should look like in a visual representation. This is the audio. One thing she's got here, OST. I'm not actually familiar with what that, I didn't even Google what the acronym is, but I just encourage people, if you're using acronyms, to spell it out the first time and then use it, because not everyone uses the same acronyms, or we have different meanings for acronyms. And then what else has she got? Slide numbers. She's got different tabs on her click and reveals to show what layers would look like. Yeah, I think that's kind of the main stuff. Greg, thoughts?
So if I understand this one correctly, then it's like kind of the 4 cards on the right are the main sort of different templates of different kinds of screens you might have. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what you'd edit, is my understanding as well. Yeah.
One thing I like about this that I hadn't thought about before is it's just the vertical arrangement of this. I could see doing this in XD or some other thing. It's really, you know, or a tool like Mural or some other Visio or digital whiteboard tool to be able to move cards around, or even PowerPoint, where you're able to get a lot of information without a lot of clicking.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool to have it vertical that way, and it also makes it easy to read up and down, but see a process at a glance. So that stuck out to me as different and interesting to explore. Also, the style guide, again, I can't remember all the details of the criteria. It seems like the style guide is critical. I don't know if that's in the scope of what we're going here. It's certainly helpful to have. I would see that as kind of another tool in the toolbox you'd want along with a series of templates. But depending, that may be the right home or not for it. But this is a ton of detail, and sort of like last comment before, I do generally like detail, but what I found in working with other people, as you mentioned, Kim, not everybody likes all the details. So depending on the working relationship that the client is requesting, I don't think that was in the brief, you know, and whether they have specific developers who are taking these and building it,
yeah, it
might be a little overwhelming. But someone like me would jump for joy if I got this to develop. I would know exactly what to do. So there's that.
Cool. Kath, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, totally agree with your comments, guys. So this is Milanote, or at least it looks. Did she say it was Milanote?
Yeah, she said Milanote. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, same kind of comment that I had in the last episode when someone used Milanote. Just think about how you're going to get the client to edit this to give you feedback. So Milanote free will give you 100 items. That is these boards. After 100, which you go very, very quickly, you're then paying $9.99 per team member. in which they can leave comments.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fine for your designers, but then for your client, any additional SMEs, think about how you're going to track and trace any changes to the content. You can drag comment boards in, which is good. So you can drag a comment, for example, under here, in which you could say, I want this changed to this. So that might work. Also, if this was a big storyboard, how would you print it out to give, if an SME said, well, we like to print it out and look at it, you know? So just little things like that. I'm not knocking it though, because we have to be open-minded and not think about the old ways we've done things, you know, in a document as such. I'm just talking about these things to think about since we're trying to build the perfect brief.
Yeah.
Hey. So, but this certainly was great, and just if you've got a lot of text, it could end up being a bit of a monster.
Yeah.
Going down.
They all need to be prototyped. I guess that's the next step. It is a mock-up, but like that's what we'd encourage you before going out and using them. All right, take us on to the next one.
Righto. So we now have Ricardo. Let's see what he has submitted.
All right, Ricardo, he sent his little email back to Clarissa, told her his life story. No, I'm joking. He said, look, what I'm presenting might be different from what you had in mind, but I think it's going to save your team time. So I like that he's called out his difference and not left the client confused. But what he actually has said is he's going to present a .storyline file, and he's basically created a storyline template. So he's talking about it there, and then in the next screen we can take a look at his storyline template. And he's actually put a demo together as well. So if you check the Miller note, you can go have a play. Kath, thoughts?
So you just hit the nail on the head there. You just called it a storyline template.
Yes. Yeah. Not what we were looking for. Storyboard template was what we were looking for.
As great as this looks, it's not a storyboard template, Ricardo. So love how you've laid it out. I've actually been really impressed how everyone jumped on, well, a lot of people jumped on using the proper font. And if you look at these now in the Millernote board, you will actually see a lot of consistencies where people have used the Poppins font and the logo, and everything looks great. It's just unfortunate it's not a storyboard template. Yeah. Greg?
It's like we had one of the other ones where they've developed it in Storyline, and like you can't use this for Rise and Beyond, which the client was looking for. So not quite on the brief. So we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah. Any comments you want to make, Greg?
It looks nice.
Yeah.
I like that. It looks.
Yeah. All right. Now we move on to Amy. Let's see what she has submitted.
All right. So basically she has here, you'll see on the right hand side, things like the project overview stuff. So due date, you can read them yourselves, like what it's all about. She's got, basically you need to, in like where she's got that purple and the Beyond stuff, it looks like that's replacing it, and you replace the text. So that's her instructions. So things like in this box, you should also explain what the intention of the slide through its layout and elements. Remember, it's only a snapshot. Treat the slide as if it's ready-made for the student or trainee to test out. That thing up the front, her image, that's the space to kind of put, what do you call it? Like your visual, your look and feel, like your screen layout. In the Beyond stuff, she's saying for slides that incorporate Beyond, how it needs to be activated should be self-explanatory. I think this is actually my interpretation of what's going on here with the Beyond stuff is putting a Beyond video into this template where it's already been completed, but the storyboard template was about planning and scripting a beyond animation. And then on the next slide, we have the project overview. So that was the storyboard. This is the project overview explaining Addie, and it's kind of like a checklist almost of, you know, this process in place. Yeah, it's probably the instructional design side of it, but it's not the project overview in terms of how to use your template, or sorry, not the template, but how to the project overview of the storyboard that's coming, with the stakeholders and the reviews and the version dates and the roles and that kind of stuff. So, Kath?
Okay, so my feedback is it's not a storyboard template.
Yep.
So
not clearly one.
No, I mean, this could be a fine project overview, you know, if someone wanted to present it this, but I mean, even that, it's not a project overview for me. If an SME wanted to skim over the first page of a storyboard, should say, what was the business challenge? You know, who's involved in this project? What was the kickoff date? What are the learning objectives? What authoring tool it's being built in? You know, it's that kind of content.
Yeah.
And then the next page was going to be the template of what they would actually write it in. So
what Amy is doing, actually, I should explain this, is that white page, she's just saying the imagery, the layout, the buttons, the text is in that white box. So she doesn't have a space where it's like, this is the audio script. She's kind of, I guess it's more of a prototype approach in this, in her submission. But I think what's missing is consideration of how does the client provide feedback when they're using it with their stakeholders, and then implementing it and version control. That might become a bit challenging. So it's probably about instructions on how to, you know, use this thing to provide your commentary. Like we've seen in the other ones, these are the things you should be providing feedback on. Here's my little checklist that it's been implemented, and then you can present it back to the client, or sorry, your stakeholder again, with your improvements made on that big white square where she's actually representing what's happening on screen. And then actually I'm curious how layers would be handled in this.
Yeah.
Greg, did you have any thoughts? Sorry, Kath.
No, it's
yeah.
just, sorry,
Go ahead, Kath.
go ahead. No, you go on, Greg.
Very brief. I feel like there's some good critical information here that does need to be in here. It's just in the wrong home. So the stuff about the articulate and the beyond specific instructions, that's great, but it shouldn't be on this slide. We want to have that with our project details and our overall instructions. So same with like the due date and even special considerations maybe, and even the course title. All of that could be off on the other slide, and we can probably bag most of the Addie stuff because it's not about the approach to design in general. Like that's maybe helpful information to tell the client that this is how I work, but it's not the project plan, right? So we want to have the instructions in the project plan, the due dates, the deliverables, kind of like you were saying before, Kim. We want that off of here, so that way we have room on here for the critical assets that are missing, like the interactivity or the audio or any other elements that actually go into the course. So that's my 2 cents here.
Thanks, Greg. All right.
Did she say what that would be built in?
I didn't see that. No, I didn't see that.
Okay.
It might be there, but I didn't pick up on it.
Because if you think about a storyboard template in this format, you know, if she took away the articulate storyline and animation and she put that, you know, what the heading is going to be and what the button name is going to be and the, you know, the body text is going to be, you know, that would have made this make so much more sense, you know. And she could still have that visual mock-up, but it's just, yeah, I agree with you, Greg. It's not in the right home.
I like that language. All right, next contestant is Amanda.
We have Amanda.
Said that this brief gave her a brain fart, and I said I would say that on the show. So, it was so let's see her brain fart. All right, this is what she got going on. It's an interactive PDF. We've all got the lessons learned from when we were talking about choice, so we won't repeat that stuff here, but in her storyboard template, she has a project overview. Who's the learning lead? Who's the deliverables audience? What's the budget? Final sign-off, reviewers, content SME, project sponsor, success measures, learning objectives, key responsibilities, ideas, and inspo. She's got a learning design and development roadmap, which is what you're seeing with the little icons. And basically, they're just the major milestones of the project. And then as we go into the next screen, you can see the actual storyboard template. And this is the section that you're in, the slide, the tools that are being used, the content mapping, the learning objective, the learning design approach, the visual and design concept, the review notes and comments. Greg, what you thinking?
So on the previous slide, the one about inspiration, what was the language on that again? Ideas and inspo.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is what she's thinking, but I love the idea of having somewhere in all of this a mood board of some kind of thing, because I think even with just a little bit, you can communicate so much of what you're trying to do from a design aesthetic.
All right, Kath, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really like this. A lot of the same comments. I think she's covered a lot of the things that are very important. So if you guys want to see the interactivity of Amanda's template, you're going to need to go to Millernote to see it. I can't demonstrate it here because this is in a presentation. So yeah, definitely go and check that out. Again, same comments about if it's an interactive PDF, how do you order it, and same things that we talked about before. Okay?
Yeah, cool.
Good job,
Nice.
Amanda.
Next contestant is... Dun, 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 dun.
It is our Emma Pawson. Let's see what she has submitted.
Okie dokie. So what you're seeing here is kind of it in action, like her heading stating what you need to do, which is the kind of the red text. And then the white text is the explanation of, you know, this is what you need to put in here. So we got the aims and purpose of the project, the learning outcomes, how to use this document. So she's got post-it notes. These little blue post-it notes anywhere throughout indicate that this is an interaction or an animation. And the pink one is the audio or visual design has something happening. And then this part down the bottom in the white background is really a high level overview glance of the learning experience that's happening. So topic, this is what that topic's about. So I guess from people that want to know, have you covered X, Y, Z? It's like your chapters or your sections. That's kind of what's happening at a high level overview. And then on the next one, we're actually looking at a mock-up of the screen. So she's saying, like, this is a wireframe. She's placed things where she's indicating they should go on screen. It'll be curious to see how that translates to Beyond and Rise. Actually, no, sorry, that's my mistake because I have on my notes here that she's actually described that she would put in the preloaded templates for things like this is a click and reveal of what's possible in storyline in Rise, and this is, so she's going to basically give a whole suite of templates, lots of pages in her storyboard as opposed to just one that fits all. And what else? There's parts in there how to receive feedback on it. What you're seeing on screen with those little post-its is like her saying, you know, when the blue one was a visual, that the blue thing is saying you need to put in your image here. And that's all I've got for you. What are you thinking? Oh, actually, sorry, I'll just add as well. She's got in, this is probably like one of the things that we are looking to see is the use of slide masters. so that you only have to update one thing throughout the whole template, as opposed to doing it on every screen. We all know how painful that is if you make a little mistake or a page number needs to be updated to the total. So there's that. And then also she's saying, you know, what's next? What this is really about is put it into something like Google Docs and then send it away, or you can have them do review in the notes section. So she's saying how that feedback can be received and communicated by all stakeholders. Greg, thoughts?
Yeah, on the very first slide, I love the, if I understand it correctly, and I think I do, the one back right there, the high level architecture. I know this is a storyboard template, so this might not fully fit in that, but I find working with stakeholders and clients in the past, if they can understand the big picture, they're so much more open and forgiving and interested in the details. If they never get to that point that they have the big picture, then you could go blue in the face about the details, and it's just always an uphill battle. So I love how that's incorporated in here as a part of like, hey, here's where we're at, big view. I mean, and you were talking earlier about incorporating principles of good, you know, learning design. Like, this is great. You know, any adult's going to want to know kind of the context before they dive into a detail usually. So I think that's a really nice touch that that adds a lot to the overall feel of this thing.
Nice. Kath?
Yeah, I'm still trying to I'm trying to understand where would you write the, so these are all single pages, are they, that you curate?
I believe so. I think what would be happening is, you know, that topic, you'd actually just replace that text with, you know, leadership. And then the heading would be like communicating expectations to your team. So it's like editing the text that's in there already. That's my interpretation of it.
Yeah.
And then,
okay.
Yeah, she's actually going to present all the different layouts in terms of, if it is a click and reveal screen, this is the layout of that. If it's a drag and drop, this is that. If it's, I don't know, a video screen, you know?
Yeah. So, absolutely. I think it is, this is a really good way to go. However, when you think about all the different configurations of stuff, like, I know what tool she's basing this on, but this tool also allows this to go underneath, right? And by the time you have, and you also have, so not on that screen, but you know, you've got all these different configurations of stuff. And sometimes I feel like, isn't it a much better use, even though this visually lets people see how things are going to look, and not focus as much on the imagery and bullshit like text and fonts and things like that and colors. But sorry, I used the BS word, but there's just a lot of configurations, and in an 8-hour period as well, that's a lot. I mean, you can't do it for beyond, you know. So here you're not showing anything. So where's, these are just things that I'm thinking
balance
about.
Between content versus visual is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, there's just, I mean, I understand if this was just one tool that this works, because it's like a template. So you're like, these are all my different page layouts of templates, and I'm gonna, these are all my layouts. This is the order that I'm gonna do, and that's fine. But when you're talking about multiple, like, there's no way you could work out configurations of this. And this is a lot of prototyping for each page, don't you think?
Would you say maybe, Kath, it's stepping a little past the scope, more towards it's become a template itself, almost?
No, it's just, you know, I'm open to this. I'm really open to this. You kind of caught me when I was mid reading. After the storyboard is complete, it can be sent to the client in the following ways. So these would then be uploaded into a Google Doc. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess then it's copy. If I don't know what this is created in, if it's XD or something, then you have to export all of them out into the Google Doc for that review to happen. Yeah, a lot of effort.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it's in XD, you could actually just share the screen of XD.
Okay.
And let them do comment, you know, but I mean, it won't track their changes or anything like that, but it could certainly allow them to leave comments and different things like that, which is totally fine. So I used to work at a place that was very templated. Every single that they at one stage just built a load of page layouts, and all you could basically offer your client were those page layouts. I hated it, but that's what they wanted. So they'd have it, let's say, click and reveal 1, click and reveal 2, right? So the page layout, right, the title actually was a hyperlink that went to a working version of that template. Now that was clever, because it was stripped back as a wireframe and the client could play with it and see and go, okay, I can understand it. But then underneath, we didn't need all of this, because it literally just had, what's your heading? What's the body text? What's the button on the continue going to be? What image do you want? Do you understand? So, that's all my feedback is on this.
Yeah, cool.
To do the configurations for, because I think this is Chameleon that she's done this in, right? She's basing this off. So that's fine if it was just one authoring tool, and Chameleon has limitations, but then Rise, you'd have a million formats.
Every interaction.
Yeah.
Putting a lot of work in, Emma, for one day of work.
Yeah, but I love the idea, but I think we can leverage on that, where you can have,
Cool.
But that's just my suggestion. If this was in a Google Sheets, the client could at least make changes and give feedback. Anyway.
Well,
time to vote.
Yeah, the last chance for people to get knocked out without a prize. We do encourage you to check them out in the Miller Note. Have a look at did they meet the criteria? Because that's what being a learning designer is all about. You got a problem to solve. Have you solved it effectively? Check the notes in the description for YouTube how to vote. Basically, it will be all participants, and the top ones will go through to the next round. They all get a one-day pass to the learning conference. Woo! Well done to those that do get through. Thank you all for putting your effort into the submissions this time. Appreciate it. A lot of thought going in, huge learnings from both episodes of the show, which is really, really awesome. Great insights. I think if you take components from each of them, I have little bear hands going on now with the way I'm wearing my jumper. Anyway, if you take components from each of them, you can really create an ultimate storyboard. Greg, thank you for being our guest. Very grateful for the insights that you've shared. You've been awesome. It's very late in his evening. We gotta let him go. But thank you all for watching. Vote, share it with anyone that's going to add value to you, and check out the learningconference.online. It's going to be freaking epic. See you there.
Bye.
Bye.